Let's talk about something most of us were never really taught, yet we deal with it every single day: how not to take things personally. If you want to stop feeling constantly irritated, offended, or emotionally drained by others, this is where it begins. You have to learn the skill of emotional detachment. Not detachment from people or from life itself, but from the emotional hooks that people unknowingly throw into your path. This isn't about becoming cold or indifferent. It's about gaining clarity, because the truth is, most of what bothers us about other people isn't really about them. It's about how we interpret their behavior through our own lens of insecurity, fear, or expectation. When someone cuts you off in traffic, disrespects you in a meeting, or sends a passive-aggressive message, the initial sting you feel, that tightness in your chest, that surge in your gut, isn't actually coming from them. It's coming from within you. It's tied to how you interpret that moment and what you believe it says about you. That's where the real work begins. And this is exactly where most people go wrong. They try to change others. But honestly, how well has that worked for anyone? We've been conditioned to tie our peace to things outside our control: someone's tone, someone's opinion, someone's behavior. Then we wonder why our emotional state feels so unstable. The issue isn't that people can be offensive. The issue is that we keep choosing to be offended. That doesn't mean ignoring real injustice. There are times when speaking up is necessary, but this is about the everyday irritations, the small things we carry around like emotional baggage. Letting someone's offhand comment live in your mind for hours or days. That's self-inflicted suffering. There's an old idea that captures this perfectly. You don't have to turn every moment into something bigger than it is. It doesn't have to upset you. Think about that. You don't have to interpret a rude email as a personal attack. You don't have to see a cold response as a rejection of your worth. You don't have to let someone else's bad mood become your bad day. This is where emotional freedom starts, not by controlling what happens, but by changing how you interpret it. Emotional detachment isn't suppression. It's not pretending you don't feel anything. It's about recognizing the feeling, naming it, and then questioning it before acting on it. There's always a gap, however small, between what happens and how you respond. That gap is where your power exists. Most people never notice it because they operate on autopilot. Someone presses a button and they instantly react. But if you can learn to widen that gap, to observe your reactions with curiosity instead of judgment, you begin to see something important. Most of what agitates you isn't personal at all. Imagine someone rolling their eyes while you're speaking. Your mind might jump to, "They don't respect me," or "I sound foolish." But maybe they just received bad news. Maybe they're exhausted. Maybe their reaction has nothing to do with you. And even if it does, what then? You still get to choose how you respond. You still decide whether to give away your peace to someone else's behavior. If you go deeper, you'll notice something else. We're easily shaken by others because we haven't fully anchored our sense of self. When your identity feels fragile, it's easy to bruise. If a simple comment can ruin your day, then part of you is being controlled by others. And that's something worth paying attention to. No one should have that kind of influence over your inner state. Not a boss, not a friend, not a stranger online. Yet we hand over that power without even realizing it. That's why detachment is a skill. It's not about being distant. It's about seeing clearly. It's about viewing situations as they are, rather than through the distortion of insecurity or ego. When you train yourself to pause, reflect, and question the story your mind is telling, you begin to reclaim control. You move from being emotionally reactive to emotionally aware. You stop needing to be right all the time. You stop seeking validation from people who don't fully understand you. And you stop internalizing every glance, silence, or remark. People will always be who they are. Some will be thoughtful, some careless, some inspiring, and others will test your patience. That's part of life. But when you stop trying to change them and instead focus on mastering your response, everything shifts. You realize that peace doesn't come from a world that never frustrates you. It comes from becoming someone who isn't easily disturbed. Of course, this takes practice. You'll slip sometimes. That's normal. The goal isn't perfection. It's awareness. The goal is to catch yourself a little sooner each time you get triggered, and to release it without beating yourself up. Every time you do that, you build resilience. Every time you let something go that once would have consumed you, you grow stronger. Over time, what once felt personal starts to feel neutral, not because you don't care, but because you've learned to value your peace more than your pride. So the next time someone interrupts you, cuts in line, or says something petty, pause for a moment. Take a breath and ask yourself, is this worth my energy, or is this just another chance to practice staying grounded? Because real strength isn't about controlling others, it's about mastering yourself. Now shift the perspective a little deeper and consider something just as important: self-awareness. If emotional detachment creates space between you and others, self-awareness helps you understand what's happening within you. And you can't truly free yourself from anger or frustration without understanding your own inner patterns. Most people move through life reacting, assuming, and defending without ever asking why they feel the way they do. They think they're responding to others, but often they're responding to patterns formed long ago. Here's the reality: you can't create lasting peace until you understand your own inner wiring. What you don't acknowledge will continue to control you. If you've ever felt disproportionately triggered by someone's tone or behavior, there's usually something deeper beneath the surface. And until you take the time to examine it, you'll keep repeating the same emotional cycles with different people. This is where inner stillness becomes important. Not the kind that requires isolation, but the kind that allows you to observe your reactions without immediately acting on them. The kind of awareness that lets you notice, I'm feeling tense right now, or that affected me more than I expected, without jumping to blame or defense. The mind prefers noise and distraction, but awareness cuts through that and asks, what's really happening here? When you start paying attention in this way, patterns begin to reveal themselves. Maybe you notice that being interrupted doesn't just annoy you, it makes you feel overlooked. Maybe being challenged makes you feel like you have to prove your worth. These reactions aren't random. They're signals pointing to something unresolved, and recognizing them isn't weakness, it's insight. The more you ignore your inner world, the more control others seem to have over you. A simple comment can send you spiraling. A delayed reply can trigger doubt. Why? Because you're not grounded in your own awareness. You're trying to define your value through external reactions, and that creates instability. But when you develop self-awareness, everything changes. You stop living on autopilot. You begin choosing your responses instead of being driven by them. That's not just growth, it's mastery, and it requires honesty. You can't grow by pretending everything is fine. You grow by acknowledging what's real within you without judgment. It starts with a simple shift. Instead of asking, why are they like this? You ask, why did that affect me the way it did? That question alone can change everything. It turns your focus inward, where real change happens. And over time, as you understand yourself more deeply, you become less reactive, more grounded, and far less dependent on others for your sense of peace. Let me explore that a little further. I understand this level of self-reflection can feel uncomfortable. Most people would rather stay distracted than sit quietly with their thoughts. And that's exactly why they remain stuck in the same patterns. Stillness doesn't mean doing nothing. Stillness is a form of strength. It's the ability to hold yourself steady in moments of tension without immediately reaching for distraction, defensiveness, or emotional reaction. When you can do that, when you can sit with what you're feeling, label it, and understand it without being overwhelmed by it, something begins to shift. Anger starts to loosen its grip. Irritation loses its urgency. You're no longer being pulled around by every emotional wave that hits you. Instead, you begin to guide your emotions with intention. And from that place, everything starts to change. Conversations that once escalated quickly begin to soften. People who used to trigger you no longer feel as threatening. Even your internal dialogue becomes quieter because you've trained your mind to pause and observe before reacting. You start to embody calmness in situations that used to feel chaotic, not because the outside world suddenly became easier, but because your inner world became more steady. This is where real strength exists. Not in suppressing how you feel, but in understanding it. Not in avoiding difficult situations, but in approaching them with clarity and composure. And this doesn't mean you'll never feel upset again. You will, because that's part of being human. But now you'll notice it earlier. You'll catch the narrative your mind is building before it fully takes over.